What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Happy Monday. We are still here enjoying the afterglow of the preseason win a little bit, I think. They say it's a 48-hour rule. Well, as of the upload of this video, it has not been 48 hours yet. But instead of just talking about the win, which, enjoy it, appreciate it while it's there. There aren't that many football games in a season, right? There's 20, maybe a few more. So whenever you get the win, you got to appreciate it. But let's try to work through some of the information we got from that game on Saturday. Let's specifically work through some information on Brady Russell, because this is a name that has been picking up some fans, some followers over the last couple of months in training camp, and it all culminated on the field Saturday night against the Chargers. And Brady Russell is a guy who now might be making a push to actually make the Seattle Seahawks roster, according to some. So you take a look at the game that he played on Saturday. He got targeted 3 times, 3 catches, 25 yards, including the only receiving touchdown of the game by either team, one of 2 touchdowns scored in that game. And he graded out extremely well, 88.3 overall, good receiving grade, really, really good receiving grade, honestly. And if you dig deeper into the PFF grades, you can see that he was graded out well as a blocker, good as a run blocker, good as a pass blocker, just 1 rep of pass blocking. But that backed up what we saw with our eyes. He looked good blocking on the field visually. And this all builds on a training camp that showed Brady Russell was making a bit of a move here. This guy was a little bit of an afterthought. He was a UDFA last year by the Eagles, and he ended up in Seattle when we had some tight end injuries last year on basically the 3rd string, and he was in and out of the active roster list, so there wasn't really a lot going on there. There wasn't really much to say about Brady Russell, but this year it seems like there's a little bit more going on, and now we have people like Brady Henderson talking about how they think that Brady Russell is playing his way onto the roster. And if you read this tweet here that he sent out yesterday, he talks about this scenario, and he says that would likely be as the 4th tight end. Noah Fant is the clear-cut number 1. They guaranteed Pharaoh Brown 2.7 basically of his $3.2 million deal. A.J. Barner is a lock as a 4th-round pick. So he's basically saying that he is thinking the Seahawks are going to carry 4 tight ends. And that means you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere else, and you're going to have to construct your offense in a very specific way to where you're getting enough out of the guys you have on the team. So let's talk about that. So first of all, just on a very fundamental level, if the Seattle Seahawks are carrying 4 tight ends, getting them meaningful opportunities to play, because you're giving up something to do that, right? It's not a free roster spot. It comes from somewhere else. So if you do that, you're probably committing to doing a lot of 2 tight end sets, like 12 personnel, and you're probably committing to do a decent amount of 3 tight end sets as well. And that doesn't even involve necessarily Brady Russell directly. He might not even get on the field in a 3 tight end set, but that's the kind of stuff you would probably have to do to justify it, right? And we're talking about a team with DK Metcalf, JSN on the verge of what is supposed to be a big breakout year, Tyler Lockett, and Jake Bobo. And I'm not even really going to get into the running backs. We have a good deep running back room as well, but you do the math on that and you're like, how is there room for a 4th tight end here? To be clear, most rosters carry 3 tight ends. So it would be unconventional. And if you were going to do something like this, you'd probably have to construct the offense specifically to make it work with the extra tight end. And I understand that the last 2 years, the Seahawks have used tight ends more than almost any other team. We've been in 2 tight ends a ton. We've been in 3 tight ends more than most other teams. And that worked fairly well. People liked that. But people also have to understand that, number one, you've got a guy like JSN on the rise here. JSN's mostly a slot receiver. So if you want JSN on the field, it's kind of hard to get a bunch of tight ends on the field as well. It's kind of an either-or situation. You're really trying to juggle things in a complex way if you're going to try to get all those guys on the field enough. So I question that. And the other consideration is last year in particular, the main reason why the Seahawks used so many tight ends, and some people argue they didn't even use them enough, but that was because we weren't getting good tackle play. Charles Cross didn't play that well when he did play. He missed a month, and when he came back, he was working back through the foot injury, and Abraham Lucas barely played, and we did not have good play behind those guys, really. It was occasionally passable enough for us to have a functional offense, but we had a lot of tight ends on the field last year because the tackles needed help. And that was the only way we could really make things work well enough for us to win the games that we did. This year, it's supposed to be different. And this year, the strength of your talent is in wide receiver. If you were to list the areas of the team that are strong going into the 2024 season, wide receiver would be right at the top. So only putting 2 or even 1 receiver on the field so you can put 2 or 3 tight ends out there is kind of taking away from one of your best positions. So on that level, I don't really know how you can justify it. But let's take a look at the depth chart and try to justify it a slightly different way. So, like I said, this depth chart, which I showed earlier today, if you look at it, you will see that there are 53 players listed on the roster. I have exactly 53 spots out of 53 spots filled. So if you're going to bring in Brady Russell, somebody's got to go. And it's not going to be one of the top 3 tight ends, I don't think. Fant is locked in. Brown is locked in. A.J. Barner, I guess you could let him go, but that's a disaster. That's a 4th round pick. You picked A.J. Barner in the 4th round. If you kick him out of here before he even plays a snap, that's kind of a disaster. And it happens, but I don't think we're going to let it happen. So what else can you do? You could carry 3 running backs. I'm going to go ahead and kind of kibosh that right now. That's a bad idea. You need 4 running backs, especially with the track record of running back injuries in the league right now, especially here in Seattle. So I don't see us only carrying 3 running backs. The only way you could potentially justify it is if you believe that Laviska Shenault is going to be able to act as a surrogate running back, and then you can just carry the 3 normal running backs and have Shenault as like your 4th. I don't buy it, but I guess it's possible the team does. I think you need McIntosh and Halani on the active roster. Or the 53-man roster, I guess I should say. And maybe from week to week you can declare one of them inactive. But I don't think you can just go 3 running backs. Most teams carry 4. I think this team needs to carry 4 as well. You could only carry 5 wide receivers. And theoretically, that probably makes the most sense, right? Because if you're going to carry an extra tight end, you're not going to need as many receivers. So it should be a receiver that goes, right? Well, it's not going to be Metcalf, not going to be Lockett, not going to be JSN, and it's not going to be Bobo. I don't think it can be Shenault because of his special teams value. I think you need him there not only for what he does as a receiver and as a surrogate running back, and also kick returns and punt returns. Like, that's a lot of value. So the only guy who you could possibly sacrifice for Brady Russell would be Derek Young. And that's probably one of the more viable things you could do. But Derek Young brings interesting things to the table as well. He, like I've said this before, I'll say it again. I really like the fact that he's able to line up at fullback occasionally and get it done. Like, that is an interesting wrinkle that most receivers cannot pull off. And let's not forget that Derek Young has been a key special teamer on the Seattle Seahawks throughout a good portion of his career. Last year, obviously, he didn't play that much, but even last year, he played over 100 snaps on special teams. And the year before, he played 200, and he was graded out pretty well both times, and he was one of the guys we leaned on for special teams reps in general. And we lost Nick Bellore, so we probably don't want to lose too many more of that. Or too many more of those guys, excuse me. So I'm not really convinced that's the solution either. Could you go a little bit thinner on the interior offensive line, or the offensive line just in general? Like, Forsyth, I guess Forsyth might not make the team, but I don't think you're just going to go into the season with 1 left tackle on the team, so he probably loses his spot to Gerald. Like, Gerald might come in for Forsyth, right? Greenfield might come in for Forsyth, but I don't think it'll be Brady Russell. Can you get rid of McClendon Curtis? That might be viable, but his flexibility is valuable, and you don't really have a lot of guys on this team that have proven experience playing at the left guard spot. So I don't think you want to skimp out there. Oluwatimi, I don't think he's going anywhere either. He's your backup center. Certainly Christian Haynes is going nowhere. I don't think Anthony Bradford is either. I don't think you can really make any of this stuff make very much sense. Maybe it's Forsyth, but I'm telling you, if Forsyth is out, I think you bump up Gerald to the active roster. So I don't know about any of that. I don't see anything on this defensive line that you can sacrifice, especially if Reed's going to be playing end, which it sounds like he is. If maybe I would say you could dump Cam Young or Hankins, but I don't think you're going to be able to do that without Reed playing the nose a lot. Outside linebacker, I mean, maybe you can get by with three because of Draymond Jones playing multiple positions. You could just say we're going to put Nelson Caesar on the practice squad. That might work. That would be okay. You're taking a little bit of a gamble there, though, right? Like, Derek Hall still hasn't done anything. You're putting a lot on Derek Hall if you do that. And Nwosu's coming off a major injury, too. So it's possible that you just bump Caesar down and then you have the extra roster spot for another tight end. I don't know if it's a good idea, though. Like, you're putting a lot on Draymond at that point. You're certainly not really doing anything at inside linebacker. You're thin enough there as is. I don't think there's any room to do anything at cornerback. You've got 6. Maybe you could trade Trey Brown, but I don't really want to trade Trey Brown. He looks like he's ready to have a big season. You need 4 safeties, and Kobe Bryant has a little bit of corner experience. I don't think you're going to give that up. So there really isn't that much you can do. The only viable options I think that make sense to carry a 4th tight end in Brady Russell would be Derek Young or the 4th outside linebacker spot. So what else do you think we could do to make this work? Because there was a lot of excitement and a lot of energy behind keeping Brady Russell on the team in 2024. But I don't know. There's a lot that would need to happen to make that make sense. All right. Let me know what you think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And hey, he's playing well. I can say that, right? He's definitely playing well.